Why do some men stare at women like they've never seen one before? If you're a woman walking on the streets of India, it can often feel like a daunting experience. The constant stares, that feeling of eyes being glued onto you, following you. Now, this is something that almost every woman has experienced, and it sounds small when you say it out loud. Staring. It's just staring, right? No. It rarely stops at staring. That's only the beginning. So what happens next? What makes these men so comfortable making you uncomfortable? The first wall is built at home. In a lot of traditional Indian households, boys and girls are kept apart from a very young age, not just physically but socially. You are told not to talk too much, not to get too close, be seen together, or not to cross that invisible line. So women never become normal to men, they become distant, something you are curious about but not allowed to understand. And while all of this distance is being created, nobody is actually teaching you anything meaningful either. Nothing about intimacy, because that's too taboo in our community. Nothing about boundaries, that appears non-existent, and consent, it's completely foreign. Nothing about how to exist around the opposite sex without shame, fear, and entitlement. And this applies to both boys and girls.
कि केस में टीचर्स कहते हैं कि इसमें लड़की भी गलती करते हैं, पर पहले हमें फ्रेंडशिप नहीं करनी चाहिए और फिर हमारी फ्रेंडशिप का फ़ायदा उठाते हैं लड़के।
आदमी यार करता क्यों है? क्योंकि उसको लड़कियों से बात करनी नहीं आती, अप्रोच उसकी गलत होती है। आदमी को यार स्कूल में यार बात नहीं करने दिया जाता है गलत से। ये सिर्फ यार समाज की वजह से हो रहा है, तो वो कि उन दोनों को यार पास नहीं लाया जा। आप जब भी मेरे से तो आपको यार चीज़ यार छुपाओगे तो वो चीज़ मेरे लिए रहस्य बन जाएगी। तो आपने यार वो मान लो एक यार घूंघट कर रखा है, हाँ तुम देखोगे यार क्या है इसके अंदर।
Because everyone is kept in the dark, then one day society expects them, same people, to suddenly know how to behave, how to date, how to marry, how to respect somebody's body, understand what no means, and how to recognize discomfort. But how? How are you supposed to respect boundaries you were never taught? How are you supposed to understand women as people when your whole upbringing treated them like a separate world? And that is where the danger starts. Because when women are kept unfamiliar, they stop being seen as people you interact with. They become something you stare at, something you whisper about, something forbidden and separate. And when a society raises boys to desire women but never teaches them how to understand women, that ignorance does not stay innocent. It becomes entitlement. In The Will to Change, the author Bell Hooks talks about how men are not raised to emotionally understand or connect with women properly. One line reads, "Patriarchy keeps them from knowing themselves, from being in touch with their feelings, from loving." And that is exactly the point. Because that is not just about boys being kept away from girls, it is also about boys being kept away from their own emotions. So when they finally grow up and start existing around women, there is a disconnect in every way. They may desire women, they may want to access women, they may even feel entitled to women, but they were never taught how to actually understand women. And this is where it stops being innocent, because you're older now and you have more freedom. And as a man, society gives you more room to move through the world however you want. So if nobody taught you boundaries before, you definitely have a responsibility to learn them now.
I was running and this is like 6 o'clock, and at 6:15 this guy was taking off right at the cycle track. It's crowded. If you're from Hyderabad, you would know this cycling track is extremely crowded. Even morning, like I wish my camera would have opened like 2 milliseconds earlier. I could have shown his face. This guy was taking off right in front of me, and now he left. But as for
Because women should not have to pay the price, all because some men were taught to watch women but never taught to respect them. And look, I'll admit, how you grow up shapes a lot. But you're grown now, so what's the excuse? So here's the thing. Even when it starts, it doesn't get corrected. It gets excused. He's just looking. Boys will be boys, they say. How do you know he's even looking at you? Just don't look back. And that's the problem. Because instead of men being called out on this behavior, it gets normalized.
Men will be men.
And when something gets normalized enough, people start treating it like it's acceptable. It's literally basic conditioning. So when men stare, make women uncomfortable, and nothing happens, no one corrects them. In fact, people even defend them.
So you are saying that women in white?
Yeah.
Women in white?
Yes.
What do you think that teaches them? It teaches them that they can keep doing it and that there are no real consequences. And when there are no consequences, men get comfortable. And that's how behavior that should have been corrected becomes behavior men feel entitled to repeat. Public spaces turn into places where women are watched and monitored. And this is where people start playing dumb, like men just don't know better. No, a lot of you do. You know what you're staring at. You know when you're staring. And you know you're making someone uncomfortable. You just feel comfortable doing it. And that comfort, that's where entitlement comes in. There's expectation. You expect to be able to look and watch, to take up that space.
And these men, the ones who were seated in front of us, they decided to just rotate 90 degrees and keep staring at us. Me and 3 of my cousin sisters. Like, what the hell? I swear to God, it was so awkward and so embarrassing. Like, ये तो दुबई है भाई, यहाँ पे तो छोड़ दो, यहाँ पे तो मत ताड़ो यार. And the worst part was, one of my sister was 13, and I felt so sad that this is what she had to experience.
And then there's another layer to it, because while real interaction with women is restricted, access to women online isn't. A lot of men grow up with very little real life experience talking to women, but unlimited access to content where women are reduced to mere bodies, where interaction isn't real, it's one-sided, where everything is designed to be watched, sometimes even paid for. So now you've got a situation where women are unfamiliar in real life, but hyper-familiar in a sexualized way online. You've barely interacted with real women, but you've seen thousands of sexualized versions of them. So when you step into the real world, that mindset doesn't just disappear, because staring starts to look less like curiosity now and more like consumption, just without the screen. And when you're used to watching women like that, it becomes easier to feel entitled to look in real life too. And once that entitlement is there, it needs a justification. And that's where the excuses come in.
A cop directed girls older than 10 years to not wear jeans and not use mobile phones, because apparently wearing provocative clothing like jeans invite attention and ultimately lead to
जब तो ये लड़कियों की भी तो कुछ गलती होगी, जब तो होया है.
हाँ, कि केसेस में भी लड़कियों की गलती होती है कि वो मतलब फ्रेंड्स वगैरह बनाती हैं, बाद में मतलब उनमें बुरी संगत का वो होता है, असर होता है.
बहुत लोगों का ये मानना है कि इसमें के केसेस में लड़कियों का भी गलती रहती है. आपको क्या लगता है?
हाँ, इसमें गलती होती है कि उनको जैसे जीन्स की पैंट पहन के चलती हैं तो लड़कों को ऐसे आकर्षित होते हैं उनको देख के.
It's your fault. It all begins with what you wear. Scientific studies suggest that women who wear skirts are the leading cause of. Do you know why? Because men have eyes. In fact, here are some examples of provocative clothing that could cause.
Let's be honest, it does not matter what she was wearing. In the book Why Loiter? Women and Risk on Mumbai Streets, author Shilpa Phadke writes, when a woman is attacked in a public space, the question of what she was doing there in the first place is inevitably asked, along with variations on the theme. What was she wearing and whom was she with? Concerns about the safety of women then are essentially about sexual safety and not safety from theft or accident or even murder. Women get stared at in everything. Modest, covered, traditional or Western, you are getting stared at. God forbid you can see my shoulders in a shirt. I'm still gonna get stared at. So at what point do we stop pretending this is about clothes? I have experienced this myself when I was in India, in a busy city, mind you. I was fully covered, full traditional outfit, dupatta on. The only skin you could really see was a bit of my arms, that too through my dupatta, and still stares. If you see someone different, you glance for a second or two, and then you move on with your life. You don't stare. And I'm someone who will stare back when a man stares at me, to break their eye contact, to make them uncomfortable. But it didn't change anything. And it got to a point where I just didn't want to go out anymore. Even if I was in a pair, I had to make sure I was in a group just to feel a bit safer and a bit less watched.
Let me tell you, I went to Banke Bihari temple because I am a huge devotee of Lord Krishna, and I continue to be one. But like yesterday at the Banke Bihari temple, when I was there fully covered with proper clothes, you all know that how crowded that place is. But apart from being crowded and being religious, that place is also very scary for a girl, especially a solo traveler in Vrindavan. When the doors opened, the crowd rushed ahead like anything. And in that rush, I have lost the count of how many times I was touched inappropriately. You know, you can like curse me, you can say words, you can say inappropriate things to me, but this is the ground reality. And I want you to know that not every religious place consists of people who are good. Not every religious person is good by heart and by mentality. Getting Radhe Radhe written on your heads, on your cheeks, will not bring Radhe in your head or in your heart. You need to become that. You need to do the inner engineering first. Then please gather the guts to get Radhe Radhe written. I mean, being a devotee, nothing was as hurtful as seeing Radha Rani's name written on the forehead of somebody who has lust in his eyes for a 20-year-old. I don't know how in the future we'll, control this matter. But I am just asking you to be safe, because not every religious person is a good person again.
The issue is clearly not what women are wearing. And if your behavior changes based on what a woman is wearing, that's not her problem. That's your lack of self-control. And when you really look at it, under all of this lies a huge contradiction. A lot of things get excused under the name of culture. But it's the very same culture that worships goddesses, bows down to Durga, Lakshmi, Saraswati, the same culture that calls women Shakti. But then when that same feminine exists in real life, in a daughter, in a wife, in a daughter-in-law, a woman with her own autonomy, then suddenly that divinity disappears. Because women are praised as symbols, but not respected as people. It is easy to worship a goddess who does not question you. It is much harder to respect a woman who does. Because some of you will sit there, religious and all. You love your mother, right? You love and respect your sister, but then you step outside and treat someone else's mother or sister like she's not even a person. But actually, scratch all of that. Because I hate that argument. Why does a woman have to be someone's mother or wife before she deserves respect? What about the fact that she's a human being? What about the fact that she exists outside of what she means to a man? So clearly this isn't about respect, it's about control. You don't get to worship women in theory and disrespect them in reality. Pick one. Act 3. Eyes that make you shrink. This is the part I don't think a lot of men actually understand. For you as a man, it might feel like nothing, but for women, it never is. Because in that moment, we're not just thinking, oh, he's just looking. We're thinking, is he gonna follow me? Is he gonna say anything? Is this going to escalate? Can I even say no at this point? Am I gonna have to play into this just to stay safe? Because we do not get the luxury of assuming it ends at a stare. Not in a place where women's safety is still a real concern. And then you add groups into it. One man staring is uncomfortable. A group of men staring? That feels like a situation. The laughing, whispering, that lack of shame. It starts feeling intentional, like you're being watched on purpose. For example, you see this even during festivals like Holi, something that is supposed to be joyful and colourful. somehow becomes another space where women have to stay alert. Because some men use the crowd, the colours, the chaos as an excuse to touch women inappropriately, to cross boundaries and then hide behind "it's holy." And that tells you everything. Because if your respect for women disappears the moment there's a crowd, music, or a festival, it was never respect, it was just convenience. So when women react strongly, it's not because we're dramatic, it's because we've seen how this can escalate. We've heard the stories, we've seen what happens when things go left. So no, it doesn't feel small, it feels like the beginning of something you have to be ready to get out of. And because of that, women don't always say anything, not because we're okay with it, but because we're trying to stay safe. Because when a man is already comfortable making you uncomfortable, you don't know how he's gonna react when you challenge him. Is he gonna get angry? And what will he do in that anger? And in a place where women have been attacked for rejecting men, you don't get that luxury of assuming every man can take rejection well. So here's a map of India, taken from a study. In the left, it's 2020, and on the right, it's from 2022. Red is higher crime, orange is second highest, and dark green is the lowest. And after looking at this, if anything, it doesn't look like a problem that's going away. To make matters worse, this is from 4 years ago. Visually, you can see some areas are getting darker between 2020 and 2022. What's crazier is that this is just what's reported. A lot of cases don't even make it this far. So what you're looking at isn't even the full picture. Family honor, fear, or shame of what comes after usually gets in the way. Again, it's women dealing with the consequences. The fact that women have to calculate their safety just to exist around you should concern you. Silence isn't acceptance. Sometimes it's just survival. To think because of all of this, women adjust and stay alert constantly, and it still happens. So at what point do we stop asking women to adjust and start asking men to behave? Because women are taught how to avoid danger, but men are not taught enough how to not be the danger. Because until men start holding themselves and each other accountable, women will keep paying the price.
As a woman, if I see 5 men on a street and if I see like 10-15 stray dogs, I would any day walk into a street with 10-15 stray dogs because I know my dignity won't be at stake. So I don't understand how in a country where safety is not guaranteed, where basic human dignity is not guaranteed, how is your main concern removing animals? I feel frustrated as a member of the youth in this country because there's nothing we can do. We are protesting, we are doing everything that we can. हम वोट करें, हमारे वोट काउंट नहीं हो रहे. हम प्रोटेस्ट कर रहे, पुलिस से डिटेन करवा रहे. So what are we supposed to do in a country like this?
Act 4. When silence becomes the teacher. Because at first, I thought the answer was simple: education. In my head, I was like, okay, surely the areas with lower education must have higher violence against women. Simple, right? But the more I looked into it, the more I realized it's not that simple. Because literacy alone is not enough.
A senior Congress leader from Karnataka was heard making an outrageous and sexist comment in the State Assembly on Thursday.
There is a saying, when is vegetable, lie down and enjoy it. That's exactly the position into which you are.
You can be literate and still be misogynistic. You can have all the degrees in the world and still not understand consent and believe and treat women like they're beneath you. And that's where the research made it clearer to me, because I found studies showing that deeply rooted patriarchy is linked to higher crimes against women. And honestly, that makes sense. Because if a society teaches men that they are above women, that women's bodies need to be controlled and that a woman's honor belongs to her family, if it teaches them that rejection is disrespect.
An incident of a man harassing, sexually assaulting a woman in Bengaluru in broad daylight has shocked the city. This is the footage of a young woman being attacked by a man who she had actually turned down on Instagram.
Violence doesn't come out of nowhere. Harassment, staring, it grows in a culture that keeps excusing it.
In January 2018, 10 in 10 days in Haryana seemed to shock everyone. And once again, सबने पूछा, इतने क्यों होते हैं यार?
घटना ये बार-बार हो रही है और होती ही रहेंगी आगे भी, क्योंकि ना लड़कियों पे दबाव है ना लड़कियों पे दबाव है।
ये है एक संसार का रूप कि चलता रहेगा, चलती रहेंगी बातें।
Because the real gap in the conversation nobody wants to have is sex, consent, boundaries, intimacy, respect. And in India, these conversations are still treated like something shameful.
I walked through 170 cities. I met 85,000 women and girls in large gatherings to small huddles with families inside homes. What do you think they said to me? Well, in most of our discussions, I heard a whole lot of nothing.
One Reddit user asked, "What's sex education like in India?" And another user said, "What do you mean, what is it like? The word sex is a taboo here. Only girls will be taught about menstruation, that too in a very hushed voice, unless it is the reproductive chapter from 8th grade, which is taught to the class as a whole. Still asking questions on it is a big no-no in most schools." That tells you a lot on its own. There's also another paper called Beyond Academics, a case for bringing comprehensive sexuality education to Indian classrooms, and it basically says this: India is the second most populous country globally, with the largest youth population between ages 10 to 24. Despite a young and culturally diverse demography, India has consistently deprioritized knowledge, awareness, and acceptance of comprehensive sexuality education for its youth. So basically, India has one of the largest youth populations in the world, but comprehensive sex education is still treated like something optional, shameful, or inappropriate. And that silence has consequences. Because when young people are not taught properly about sex, consent, boundaries, intimacy, and respect, they don't just magically learn it. They learn from friends who also don't know. They learn from the internet, which has a lot of misinformation. From sexualized content. They learn from nothing. And that is the problem. You cannot keep sex education out of homes, out of schools, out of policy, and then be surprised when ignorance fills the gap. Because when adults refuse to have these conversations, the internet raises the child, and that is dangerous. Because when you refuse to talk about sex, you don't create purity, you create ignorance, and ignorance mixed with entitlement, that is what's really scary. So yes, schools matter, but homes matter too, parents matter too. Because this is not just an education issue, it's a patriarchy issue, a parenting problem, a silence issue, and a big accountability issue. And until we address that, women will keep being told to adjust around the behavior of men who were never taught, corrected, or held accountable.